Well, yes, we were just talking about how Whoa, welcome on Bienvenue on this amazing summer's day, and I'm reliably informed that tomorrow is a full moon and at the same time Beltane. My goodness. To those of you who have a bent of knowledge in this area, it's a restarting, it's a renewing of spirit and energy, and I think we could all bloody do with that. Anyway, including the government, moving swiftly on. I'm not going to be political. Of course, let me welcome to the show Hamish McClare of Search Convey, my Lord Master, help me set this up in the first place. And of course, the incomparable, the incandescent, sparkling as he is in his suit and tie, Mr. Silas J. Lees of Wiggy Wham. Now, today's topic is not quite so happy as the time of year, but it is something that needs talking about. It's too good to let. The rise of rental scams, but and potentially Silas will unearth us all with even more tale of woe later on. But let's get there first. The rise of rental scams. Hamish, would you care to start us off?
Well, first of all, I will not be dancing around the maypole tomorrow. It's not part of
I would pay money to see that.
May Day it is. May Day it is. Yes. And hopefully we'll have some grand weather like today. Now, any day is a good day, as we well know. It's just such a massive, great imposition on so many areas of how we're living these days that whatever we do, there are scammers afoot. And there are some rather complicated and very, very unfortunate situations arising with rental properties. It's very, very easy to do. And when you actually sort of think about it, there are regulations. But of course, this is when people, it doesn't matter what the regulation is. Somebody can actually sort of set up, rent the property out, or, become a,
So my dog does not agree with that.
The realization that May Day approaches. However, back to where we were. But it's very, you think about this as a sort of situation. You rent a property and there's a dramatic shortage of properties at the moment for rental, particularly. And whenever a rental property comes up, there are masses and masses and masses of people. They want. And as soon as it appears, it is gone because somebody's actually taken it, or because there never was one in the first place. However, what can happen, somebody decides they'll rent a property, they'll take Airbnb, we'll have this for a fortnight. They set it up and they say, we've got a property and we're looking for tenants. And so they put it out there. The flock of these people actually sort of come in. They get a deposit from having shown somebody around and say, this is what's available, such and such, all the details. Drop us some money and you can move in. So the money transfers hands. The person that was renting the property disappears. The person that thought they were renting it turns up. And lo and behold, there's somebody in there. And they find out then it's Airbnb. And they've been set up with this scam, and they've let a couple of grand change hands. And there's no way of getting it back because the person has disappeared without trace.
Yeah, it appears to be something that part of the human condition. Is there an opportunity to scam someone? Somebody will find a way of doing it. Silas, is this kind of rental scam? I'm sure I heard about it years ago, actually, at the beginning of Airbnb.
Well, I think you're right, Gareth, and this has just perpetuated the cycle with the lack of availability of housing. Now, let's not forget that a scam of this type preys purely and simply on people's desperation. So there are many people out there that are looking for a property. They've been looking for a long time. They might be under threat of eviction. And so all of this desperation builds. They see an advert, they go and look at a property, and it's at that point where a landlord says to them, okay, well, if you're interested, I need a security deposit. Now I need 2 months rent off your front. I need money for credit checks, etc., etc. This bill starts to rise, and because they're desperate and they have no option, they hand over the cash, as Hamish has quite rightly pointed out. So it's a real tragedy, and it started to compound as a result, I believe, of more and more landlords choosing to exit the market.
Right.
This has totally been driven by government policy, higher taxation, removing landlords' rights in favour of tenants, in order to try and solve, of course, one or two of the bad apples that were causing, a problem within the housing market. And I think the phrase was used last week of a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, and that's certainly what's been going on. But of course, these scams have risen as a result of that, and that's terrible for consumers.
It appears to me that this isn't the end of the scamming. There's lots of different variations, are there not, Silas?
Well, interestingly, Gareth, I had a solicitor confide in me as to exactly how you go about stealing property and how the scam works. If you not just want to take some money up front for rental property.
Hang on a minute. Let me just get right. Okay.
Get your pen and paper ready, and I'll walk you through the step-by-step process of what you do. I'm not going to do it, but one of the things that stood out of that conversation was it was no more than about 2 minutes long, and it's remarkably easy for somebody in the know to execute a property theft. And when it was unfolded to me, I was absolutely staggered, and I have yet to see any estate agent, any letting agent put provisions in place that will stop this from actually happening. And it's an enormous racket. It costs the land registry an enormous amount of money each year, which is, I believe, not very often disclosed, just the amount of millions that it's actually costing taxpayers effectively, because we're footing the bill for these frauds that actually take place in the British property market.
But would the result of this fraud actually stand up in the law courts?
Well, the way that it's done on the surface, yes. I mean, obviously, it is an illegal activity.
Right.
But the problem is that to the solicitor executing the sale, everything looks above board. And this is one of the provisions that we've looked at very seriously to protect both conveyancers and consumers. Because obviously, let's say, Gareth, you're the owner of the property, and some scoundrel comes in and takes it off you. You're out of pocket. You might still be paying a mortgage on a property that you don't own.
Quite common, isn't it? I've heard this before. You come back, find somebody else is in there. They're not going to move. They supposedly own the property now, and you've still got this 20 odd years left of a mortgage to pay back. And even if you're going to go for early settlement, you're still talking a lot of money, more money than most people have in there, sitting around in their bank accounts gathering dust.
Quite right, and with no asset to show for it. So it's a very precarious situation. And again, these sorts of situations all seem perfectly innocent on the surface, and that's where extra vigilance is required from conveyancing solicitors, from estate agents, and also letting agents to safeguard their clients' interests and to safeguard their own reputation, ultimately.
So let me ask you, going back to the rental side, because today's topic is really focused on the rental scams, how common are these in your estimation? Because it seems to me that there's always been scams in property. I mean, right from training centres to train you up so that you can become a property magnate and all the rest of it. Although I talk about those things, my dear friend Chris Gilson, who now is a very credible property developer, initially got his training through something of that, but managed to turn it into something that actually was sensible. But there's always been these organisations that willing to take money off you with regards to property. I mean, how common is it?
It's very common, unfortunately, Gareth, and that is a background that I know very well. I used to do a lot of that teaching, presenting across the country, and even internationally to students to help them start, build and grow a property portfolio. And there are so many people in that industry who have zero credibility. Most have never done a property deal in their life, and yet they tell you that they've got all this information. They'll sell it to you for the bargain basement price of $9,997, and a 3-day weekend of your life to learn all of this amazing information. The reality is those sorts of things have been happening for probably the best part of 20 or 30 years.
Yes.
You've then got the landlords that would take money off tenants and give them slum accommodation. That's always been a factor in the housing market. I think there was a landlord that narrowly evaded jail this week as a result of providing slum accommodation, which probably would have been the best thing for him, to be honest with you. But most landlords are quite fair and reasonable, but there will still be these people that have rented to immigrants coming into it from overseas. They've rented them a mattress on a garage floor. Those are stories that I've heard of. No security, no privacy, no nothing, no basic facilities. You've then got I think the Airbnb scam has become far more prevalent recently, and I've certainly noticed it online with the various social media groups where people have commented on there where they've been scammed, or they've put the question out there. I've got a landlord asking for 3 months rent up front plus a deposit, but something feels off. What would you advise? And of course, if you feel that way, let's just say no.
And I, in a way, Hamish, if you recall, we heard earlier in the week the incomparable Tiffany and her friend, was it Ali, who were. That's right. Who have been in the throes of a rental, I wouldn't call it scam, but certainly terrible maltreatment. Promised a 3-bedroom flat, as usual. And here's the commonality between us, as you described, Silas. They were in a desperate situation, which forced their hand, increased alacrity, and it meant perhaps less checks were done. They were promised a move from a 1-bedroom, very tiny place, but in good working order, to a place that was going to be so much more magnificent. And they get there and they find and they weren't allowed in the viewing to go to the first floor. When they actually gate the keys and they go in there, go to the first floor, and they realize why. There's been a complete breakdown of the sealant around the skylight. There's rot coming through. There's black mold behind everything, and there's a child there on the way, etc., etc. This, to me, feels fraudulent in itself, and is another form of scam, is it not?
Well, I think that there are people out there who will actually resort because of, and Silas explained it very, very effectively. People are under a lot of pressure.
Yes.
Mentally, as well as sort of just pressure generally. You need somewhere to live. And because of the shortage, there is this drama created within that. There's an inbuilt sort of stress. And certainly checks you would possibly have carried out if you weren't under pressure would be so much easier to tolerate. But the thing is, we've also got a phenomenal advance in technology. So people can actually get out there tremendous photographs and wonderful aspects of that particular sort of nature and produce these wonderful, wonderful videos very, very cheaply. In fact, without cost in reality, because they've got this free website or this sort of whatever they bought into software wise. So out it goes, and it looks absolutely marvelous until the truth is actually sort of out. So I think that there's a combination of several aspects where we're never really going to be completely clear of people who are intent on getting the better of others. I mean, it's
almost part of the human condition, where there are a group of people trying to do something honestly and with the best of intentions. There'll be an element that tries to take advantage of that. And it's sad, but I think it's a truism.
I think that I think the advance of technology is helping this. We all know what a great thing it is, and I mean, Silas's experiences and the experience of other estate agents as well that we speak of, what they're able to do now in terms of presentations is phenomenal. But it's not just the good guys that are taking advantage of it.
Can I just jump in here? We've had a comment from at Fenlander 7114. Thank you very much for your comment. Housing shortage, simple solution. Local councils obliged to build 2 new homes, each half of the size of every property sold. What say you, Silas?
I mean, the idealism is there. The unfortunate part about it is that local councils across the country, a large proportion of them seem to be very short on funds. And this is an initiative that really needs to come from central government to reallocate funding towards housing, social housing. We have seen a dearth of that. And in fact, many local authorities have sold off their housing stock to housing associations.
Right.
They are doing a reasonable job with the resources that they've got. I've seen, particularly around the West Midlands, housing associations selling off old stock and renewing it by getting, I think it's Section 106 housing from developers. So they're basically buying in new stock at half the price. Fantastic. But I think, part of that argument comes back to the quality of the build, which we've discussed on various other shows, of course. But also, the local authority has got to execute with funding. And that's a very difficult conversation to have, because there doesn't seem to be the funding for many local authorities to even carry out their basic, services.
Yeah, it worries me. We are more than happy to perpetuate interests abroad, but we have on our back door, Hamish, a crisis that is here, not even burgeoning. It's finished that phase. It's here. Chickens coming home to roost.
I think the sad aspect is, there's been hints from all sorts of different sort of areas, all sorts of different sort of places for several years now. It's not something which has started already. It's something that previous governments have been aware of, and previous governments have always said, we're going to crack this, we're going to build, but nothing like and this is one of the tremendous. It was such a shame, because massive great fanfare, in comes our government, we're all expecting something to happen, but unfortunately the funds available are going in the wrong direction. They're not going to support the country, they're to support people who choose not to. Well, it's a bit unfair that, but they're, because of what has been created, the number of people unemployed has risen. So
yes.
Actually, so there's so many things compounding towards it. If you're spending money on one thing, you cannot have a ship that works.
We're forever running around with corks trying to plug the holes. That's the problem. We've got some lovely comments. Zara, a friend of the show, lovely to see you online, Zara. A legal eagle who only too painfully knows some of this. Social housing, not fit for purpose. They want the gleaming star with shared ownership, but it's just not an affordable rent. What say you, Hamish?
Well, I think this is something we've come across before, and certainly a friend of mine was caught up in this particular sort of scenario about the shared ownership. And so many councils will actually sort of buy into flats, for example. They will fund it. And instead of people being able to buy it, or in fact to encourage people to get onto that property ladder, they say, come share this property, come share it with us. You can have 25%, 50%, 75%. Right. You then pay all of the bills that are required to sustain the whole of the property, whatever percentage you're actually sort of paying. And in reality, when you try and actually sell this property on, you find it's such an inglorious mess that you end up in financial difficulties, because you just can't escape from it.
Your shared ownership doesn't appear to be the golden goose that I thought it was going to be. Let me just bring on another great comment. Thank you, Fenland. I appreciate these. Good point. There's a deeper angle there, one that results in endemic shortage of supply and keep the peasants in order. And he follows up with some desperate nostalgic delusions of empire long gone. Explain in part what foreign aid paradigm. Yes. Well, yes, of course. I understand that. Of course, we feel some sort of allegiance to helping those abroad, because once upon a time we, in big inverted commas, owned them. What say you, Silas?
Well, there is another point just to tack on to what you were saying from Hamish's perspective and Zara's perspective about social housing. There was some studies done very recently. The results were released, I think it was literally last week, and they analysed the impact that the shared ownership scheme had on British homeowners. And the scheme had genuinely helped. I think it was something like 384,000 people. Let's say it was about that number, although don't quote me. But the overall impact was that the cost of housing for everybody else had gone up by about 9%. So whilst it had helped genuinely a small minority, for millions of other home buyers, the cost had escalated by 10% there. So it's not worked in the way that the mechanism was originally designed. In terms of the other points that Fenlander raises here, I was looking at this from the Renters' Right Act perspective, and also the Chancellor's thought process of bringing in a rental freeze to the housing market. And I'm just looking at this from a basic economics point of view, going supply and demand. You're squeezing supply and you're wondering why demand is shooting up and prices are shooting up.
Right.
So if I was a landlord, none of this makes sense. But if I was designing legislation and process and procedure that helped big corporate landlords and drove massive demand for them, for their assets, and drove massive price increases for their assets, well, it would make perfect sense. So I kind of see where Fenlander's coming from there. Not a particularly nice perspective to be looking at things from, but
well, it just irritates me because it's supposed to be a Labour government. Aren't they supposed to be towards the common man? And it seems to be they're not.
One would think so, but it bothers me when you have people making decisions about, say, for example, the housing market, when they have zero experience as a landlord, as a tenant, perhaps. Was it the shadow housing secretary has now been served notice by his landlord before the Renters' Right Act becomes formalised on the 1st of May? He predicted would happen and has happened as a result of...
Couldn't happen to a nicer person.
Well, this is the problem. So on one hand, there's this element of incompetence, and I will say that, that the people who are making these decisions really haven't thought through the short, medium, or long-term consequences of it. It just seems to be sound bites for votes and hell to the future. And I think there's a storm coming that I think is going to knock us sideways if we're not careful, unless something is seriously done about.
I was seriously excited by a new Starmer government, but now, especially in housing, I wouldn't trust them to sit the right way on a toilet seat. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, right. I mean, what we went slightly off subject, but that's nothing unusual. However, in many respects, it wasn't entirely off subject, because what we've been speaking about are the pressures which create the situation. So people themselves find themselves in difficulties. Oh, I need this particular property. They won't carry out the checks. Unfortunately, because of the rental side of things, they won't necessarily be speaking to a solicitor. They won't be going through the same sort of hoops, if you like, relative to purchasing a property. So, but there are various checks that could be carried out. I think it's a matter of, even if you're in a difficult spot, do be wary about it. And it's a massive, great challenge. We have a shortage, and really it's just a matter of people just trying to keep their head within those shortages to see what's best for them, because it might seem what's a good idea on the face of it. But like, as Gareth mentioned earlier, Ali, we spoke to earlier in the week, what a fantastic thing to escape to, as it could be somebody seeing this wonderful advertisement on there. Look at this wonderful place to move into, and it's an Airbnb, which they have got no rights to at all. So be careful, just be careful.
I'm not saying we're all doomed, but I think it's the human condition. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that somebody wants to try and pull you down. You may be finding success, and I think we need to withstand the urge to either nail them to the cross or at the same point laud them. We need to find a way to navigate through this. Fernanda has made a last comment. I'm not sure that I'm going to be all right, here we go. It's a short and sharp one, and we'll probably just have a grin about it. BlackRock boss, before he became the boss of WF, had a private Downing Street audience with Starmer. # just saying, and I don't think we need to make any comments on that, or we might land ourselves in legal hot water. Exactly, quite so. And I just want to thank all of you for watching. Thank you for all your great contributions. Penlander, Zara, and others. Thank you so much for that. Someone even commented I had a nice hat on. I appreciate that. But to all of you watching, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and in these slightly troubling times, please look after that mental health. Until next week, more riveting conversation on Property Quorum. Don't forget, tomorrow we have, it's not really our flag. I always thought that Property Quorum was our flagship, Hamish, but cladding matter has become a proper bun fight, especially with the legal machinations going on behind the scenes. I would very much like it if you could join us then. That's tomorrow at 1 o'clock, same place, but it's called Cladding Matters. And we don't just talk about cladding, we talk about building safety and all aspects thereof. So until next week, until tomorrow, in fact, take care and bye-bye.